Welcome to today's Reduce and Reuse meeting. My name is Leah Kelleher, and I'm going to be starting off our presentation today. I am joined by the lovely members of our Reduce and Reuse team, Kathy Mirza, who is our branch chief for the Municipal Waste Reduction branch, and then Janice Perret, who is also in our branch and works on education and outreach. And then oh, sorry, I skipped a slide. There we go. Sorry about that. Here we are. And okay, you can see our lovely faces now. Kathy, Janice, and Leah. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We can already cross off that first one, the welcome and introductions. Next, I'm going to introduce the midpoint review of the state's Reduce and Reuse Action Plan. I'm going to give an overview of the review process. I'll provide some background about the plan, what it is, how it came to be, so we can all get a refresher. And then I'll also give a quick reminder of what's within MassDEP's purview as it relates to the plan. From there, I'll share a little bit about how we're measuring progress in the reduce and reuse space, and that'll be followed by a deeper discussion of 3 priority material streams from the plan that we'll be discussing today, which are reusable foodware, aka single-use packaging, textiles, and electronics. So why are we here today? Well, it's been 3.5 years since MassDEP's Reduce and Reuse Action Plan was released, and it's time to do a midpoint review of what we've done and where we're headed. This is the first of 3 meetings, and each is going to focus on priority material streams laid out in the action plan, like I just mentioned. And our goal for each of these meetings is really to first give you a status update of the progress we've made on those materials and the actions within the action plan. And then we're going to share what's been accomplished so far, what's ongoing, and then we'll also talk about some of the things we haven't yet started. From there, we're going to get your feedback. That's really the goal of this meeting, so we can make sure that we're not missing anything. And we know that time has passed since the plan is released, and the reuse and repair landscape may have changed. And so we really want to gather feedback from you about, do our strategies need to be updated or tweaked? And that'll become a little bit clearer as we go along. But like I said, before we jump into the review, I'm going to rewind a little bit and give a high-level overview of the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan and how it came to be. I think we could all use a refresher because there's a lot there. It's a complicated plan and there's a lot of moving parts. So the action plan can be found on our website. If you want to go there and see the actual document and follow along, you're welcome to. Janice will put a link to it in the chat. You can also always Google MassDEP Reduce and Reuse Action Plan, and it should come up as one of the first search results. And it's located on the Reduce and Reuse webpage. We have a landing page, and there's a PDF there if you want to find it later. So where does this plan come from? Why was it created? Many of you probably know that we have a statewide solid waste master plan, which really sets 2 big goals: reduce statewide waste disposal by 30% over the next decade, and then the long-term goal of achieving 90% waste reduction by 2050. And you can see those high-level goals in the graphic in the lower right-hand corner of the slide under 2020, that should be 2030, solid waste master plan goals. There's a lot that's covered in the master plan. It's not all about reuse, but there are certainly parts of it that specifically focus on reuse and really acknowledge that to reach our high-level waste reduction goals, we need to reduce waste at the source, we need to reuse, we need to repair, we need to do all those other R's that prevent waste from being created in the first place. And with that in mind, it called for a reduce and reuse action plan. And charged with this mission, MassDEP formed a working group that began meeting in 2020. Over a series of meetings that were held, MassDEP collected feedback from that group on the barriers to reuse and repair in Massachusetts and the opportunities to overcome them and really grow our reuse ecosystem here in the state. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of ideas that emerged over the course of those meetings, and MassDEP collected them, translated them into actions that were then prioritized and categorized into buckets, what were called strategy tools in the plan. And those strategy tools, which during this presentation we'll simply be calling strategies, they reflect the different ways that MassDEP can support source reduction and reuse initiatives. All of that whole process culminated in the R&R Action Plan, which was published in December 2021. Earlier, I mentioned that we'll be focusing on priority materials, and really what I'm talking about are the materials right here. These were first identified in the Solid Waste Master Plan, and they're considered priority for reuse because they have significant diversion potential on a tonnage basis. They can reduce waste by phasing out materials that are difficult to recycle. They have strong potential for increased reuse and donation, and there are local markets for them that exist in Mass, but those markets are either underutilized or have development potential. And so the way that we're approaching the implementation of the action plan is really focusing on 1 to 2 of these material streams at a time, noting that we can't tackle all at once. Like I said, there's a lot in this plan. So for some of these streams, as we go along, you'll see that we've made a lot of progress, while for others, we haven't really started them yet. And we'll be talking about that, and you'll see it as we dig in. Today, we're going to be focusing on single-use packaging, which again, we're calling reusable foodware because that's really what the action plan focuses on and a lot of the terminology that's in the plan. We'll also talk about textiles and then look at electronics. And I just wanted to note too that you'll see there's 3 other material streams on here: household durable goods, business institutional furniture, fixtures, equipment, and building materials. Those are going to come in the next 2 meetings that you hopefully saw in the invite. I also want to note that some of the actions in the plan don't just tackle one of these streams. They're really bigger, broader actions that address many of them all at once. And we're going to be going over some of those broader actions toward the end of the presentation. And also one last note, you don't see wasted food here because it's actually addressed in the MassDEP Organics subcommittee and plan. So if you're looking here and you're like, where's food? That group focuses on food waste, and we focus on these materials. Here are those barriers to reuse and repair that the stakeholders identified during those earlier work group meetings. And we think it's important to acknowledge these because they're really what the action plan is working to address. They are cultural. Consumers may lack the knowledge, attitudes, behaviors that would support greater cultural adoption for waste prevention, reuse, repair, and mass. There's also access. There might be insufficient access to convenient reuse and repair options in the state. Infrastructure. Reuse and repair organizations need greater support to maintain and grow their capacity. Policy. Local, state, and federal policies might inhibit reuse and repair at times. And then markets. Market trends and product design, they don't always align with waste prevention and reuse goals. So again, These are the barriers we're really trying to take down and address. And then when brainstorming and organizing actions to overcome those barriers, there were several strategies that emerged. And these really are the methods by which we, MassDEP, and you could influence the growth, normalization, and improvement of reuse in mass. And they really help us organize all those individual actions that were brainstormed into buckets or categories. So here they are in no particular order. We have education and behavior change. This is like public outreach to help convey the why of reuse, why it's so important, to amplify it to the public. Tools, resources, and technical assistance, which really address the operations and implementation of reuse and repair. How do we build an ecosystem? Grants and financial incentives, which are all about funding reuse, making it work financially. Job training and workforce development. How do we staff reuse and repair in mass? How do we make it work? Who are the people behind it? Do we have people who are skilled workers in this space? And a quick note here, we, MassDEP, we don't create trainings or workforce development, but we do support it through grant funding. And really our grants can be a catalyst for that kind of work. Then we've got networking, which is really what we're doing today, connecting people working in this space in mass. And then legislation, which we're including here, policies, regulations, ordinances, all the things that enable this work. And then procurement, how do we model it as a state and get things on state contract potentially. So you'll see these strategies come up again when we get to each priority material, but this is an overview to sort of get yourself oriented and understand what we mean when we say networking or grants or tools. And then here's a reminder of what's within our purview. So MassDEP, we provide grants and financial incentives, we provide technical assistance, we do education and outreach, and then of course, network building, like we're doing with this group. And I just want to say that our work is designed to support all of you, our partners in this work, from municipalities to businesses, institutions, nonprofits, and residents. This is a growing ecosystem, the reuse ecosystem, and it requires involvement from everyone, all of us, many sectors. We need all hands on deck. The action plan also maps out ways to measure progress. And we wanted to acknowledge that measuring waste prevention and reuse has always been a challenge because it represents an absence of waste generated in the first place. And that can happen in many different ways and by many different players. So while reuse isn't usually measured in terms of tonnage, at least not yet, we know that from a greenhouse gas perspective, the upstream impacts of creating and transporting new products contributes a lot to climate impacts. And therefore, reusing consumer goods, that can really be a game changer, especially as we scale up systems and programs, as we'd like to do. So from a downstream or waste perspective, we're continuing to track the impact of reuse activities. On this slide, you can see some of the examples of those things, like tracking the number of grants requested and awarded, and then project results from grants that have been awarded, technical assistance requests, how many are we getting, local access to reuse hubs like libraries of things and repair events. Those are just some of the metrics that we can track, and then we can pair that with the waste characterization data on the tonnage of waste sent for disposal in mass. And looking at those two things, we can try to quantify waste avoided through source reduction and reuse. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that we've made quite a bit of progress over the past few years. There seems to be a lot of momentum in this space, and we're really excited about it. So on a whole, we're seeing more variety of reuse businesses that manage reusables. We're seeing this come up in the grant applications we receive, but there's also just a lot of work happening out there in Mass, whether it's the Great Exchange, which focuses on furniture, fixtures, and supplies, to Redish, focusing on washing reusable foodware, to Boston Building Resources, focused on building materials, to Hand Up, which is mattress reuse at times. We've also seen a substantial increase in grant applications, the number of them, that aim to address reuse. And here's a snapshot of them on this slide with dollars that have been awarded for each of these grants. Just for folks, for your knowledge, the SMRP stands for Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. RDP stands for Recycling Dividends Program. Those are both focused on municipalities. I also just want to note that those numbers that you see on the screen are from the last round of grants for each grant, which might have different time frames, but this is like the most recent round that we're seeing and the dollars awarded there. We've also seen an increase in the number of municipalities working to capture items for reuse, whether it's through swap sheds, zero waste days, repair events, the expansion of centers for hard to recycle materials, such as Wachusett Earth Day. And we've also seen more technical assistance. It's usually provided through Recycling Works in MA for commercial reuse, and we've also seen municipal assistance coordinators, we have 8 of them, providing a lot of support to municipalities on their quest to enable reuse at the local level. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to celebrate, a lot of good stuff happening, and now we're just looking to see how we can grow even more. All right, that was a lot of info, but hopefully it helped give some context for the discussion we'll be having. I'm gonna hand it over to Kathy, but first, are there any questions so far?
No.
If there are,
no questions.
No questions? All right, we can keep going. I'll hand it over to Kathy.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leah. Next slide, please. Super, so thank you, and good morning, everyone. We really appreciate your participation today as we start our review process for the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan as Leah laid out for us. So I'm gonna walk with us together to dive into the 3 different material streams that we're gonna be discussing today, starting with reusable foodware, the arrow going to single-use packaging, because so far we've really focused our efforts on reducing single-use plastic packaging for food takeout containers, which are mentioned explicitly in the plan. So next slide, please. So everything that we're going to review in the next group of slides comes directly from the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan itself, including what we've done, what's on deck, and then followed by your feedback on this, what you might suggest going forward and what have you. And I want to make a note that there are staff from across our waste reduction group, both the municipal and the commercial branches, that have all worked to support the reuse initiatives that I will cover in the following slides. So next slide, please. So our first strategy addresses education and behavior change. So if you look at the first row, the top row, for each strategy, we identify the action that's noted in the plan, the status of our work here, followed by some examples of what we've done. So that's how these next several slides are laid out. So in terms of education and behavior change, we've worked to develop a statewide education campaign around best practices for reducing waste and increasing reuse through a variety of mechanisms. Our Recycle Smart Massachusetts team, of which Leah and Janice are a part, as well as Kathy Dudnoff, If you're not familiar with Recycle Smart Massachusetts, that's the platform that we use for much of our outreach and educational initiatives for all things, both recycling and reuse. They create a newsletter, so we have used that outreach tool several times, as well as social media posts to promote the use of reusable foodware. We also promote these efforts through the state's Green Team, which is an environmental program for K-12 schools. It's a fabulous resource. Check out their website if you're working in public school sector or private school sector, frankly, K-12. And we've also shared through the Green Sword group, which is a statewide working group led by Gail Swarter-Garin. And that's all about school, it connects school waste reduction leaders from across the state to address reuse in the schools. And they have a subgroup that's specifically focused on reusable foodware. So they network and talk about how to get it done. We also try to spotlight our grantees on our website that enable reusable foodware programs, such as Rethink Disposables in their work, for example, with the community, Truro's Community Kitchen, where they now utilize reusable containers for this service. So there's some fabulous examples out there, and we try to showcase those on our website, and we'll continue to add more as they come along. On the lower row, it looks at tools, resources, and technical assistance that we've provided relative to reusable foodware. So in November of 2024, we published the best management practices for reusable takeout containers, or BMPs, as we will refer to them. And those offer a bevy of valuable tips and resources for Massachusetts-based food establishments that are interested in replacing single-use takeout containers with reusable serviceware. So specifically, the BMP provides insights on all the necessary practices related to inspection of the materials, tracking, returning, washing, rinsing, and all those important steps that are necessary for reusable containers. Now, Recycling Works is the waste reduction program for businesses and institutions that is funded by MassDEP. So I'll be referring to their valuable work numerous times throughout the webinar this morning because we work very close hand in hand with them. And they do our outreach and technical support for, as I mentioned, businesses and institutions. So the team at Recycling Works conducts outreach to promote the use of these best management practices for reusable foodware. And then upon request, they also provide direct technical assistance, so one-on-one with entities who are interested in getting some help transitioning from single-use disposables to reusable foodware. Next slide, please. Then we look at grants and financial incentives in this space. So we've provided startup funding to assist some restaurants, colleges and universities, and schools as well, switching from single-use to reusable foodware systems. So I wanted to just share a few examples with you. Through our Reduce, Reuse, and Repair microgrants, one of the grantees was Recyclable. I think Margie might be on the call today. Recyclable provides local restaurants with reusable containers and a usage tracking system, enabling them to offer diners a sustainable alternative to single-use takeout packaging. We've also offered a microgrant awarded, I should say, a microgrant to Stonehill College, where they set up a tracking system for their Choose to Reuse takeout container system, which has now been rebranded as Reusey. Now, for municipalities, our Recycling Dividends program that Leah mentioned a few minutes ago, that is part of our larger Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant for cities and towns, the large annual grant that comes out each year. That provides opportunities for municipalities to both earn points when they implement programs to enable reusable foodware, such as schools that have dishwashers and reusable trays. And then these municipalities can choose to spend their grant funds on additional products or services to expand this work. Also through our SMRP grant, the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program, we've awarded a few large waste reduction grants to municipalities that are doing, that are trying to enable reuse of foodware on a larger scale. So there have been a few school districts that have tapped into this grant to get dishwashers throughout the school district and get the needed equipment to be able to do that on site. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our recycling and reuse business development grant. That's another grant that's offered, again, to businesses and institutions, a grant that was awarded just in the 2024 cycle to Redish. And Redish is a third-party warewashing facility that's located in Boston. So for entities, certain types of entities that are interested in employing reusable foodware and don't have the system on site to do the dishwashing, there is now a third-party warewashing facility located in Boston that is available and operational already. And we help them get online with the grant as well. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see job training and workforce development. There's been no action on our part yet to report here. But when we get to the feedback section, we would love to hear from all of you about any experiences that you may have relative to any workforce development or job training in this space because of the work, the very important work that you do here as partners with us. Next slide, please. So in terms of networking, we've taken steps to engage stakeholders through our reduce and reuse meetings like this one, but we do have periodic meetings where we bring everyone together and share some of the learnings that we've had in recent months and try to bring everyone into that fold so that everyone knows what's going on and stays in the loop. We also have a listserv that's, I would say, kind of lightly used, and I encourage folks to dial into that and use that as an opportunity to connect with one another and share, because there are a lot of folks that come to these meetings and so much good work that's happening out there. So that is another way for you to stay connected with one another. We also have our, as mentioned a few moments ago, our Green Sword Working Group that looks exclusively at waste reduction in the schools. And as I mentioned, they have a subgroup that's explicitly focused on reusable foodware. With respect to procurement and opportunities in this space, we've made a few strides in this area. Reusable stainless steel cafeteria trays are now available to purchase off of state contracts. So if there are school systems that are interested in going down that path, that is one product that is now available off of state contract, which makes it easier for schools and public entities to acquire products when they're on state contract, because they've already been vetted and the community does not need to go out to bid for these products or services. They're already available on state contract. And for the municipalities that participate in our Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant, that's, as I mentioned, our annual grant. On average, about 300 municipalities each year participate in this grant, and that's 300 out of 352. So we have very substantial ongoing participation. We're modifying our minimum eligibility criteria for that grant starting next year in 2026, where we'll be requiring that each municipality adopts a sustainable purchasing policy or a more broad environmental purchasing policy that will enable more reuse and include reuse of materials as part of its goals. So we are branching out into that space as well to get it on the radar of city and town officials when they do these sorts of procurements. Next slide, please. So with respect to legislation, policies, and ordinances, we're grateful. We've been successful over the last couple of years in our conversations and engaging with the state's Department of Public Health. We've met with them many times over the last few years so that we could get a better understanding of the food code requirements around reusable containers at food establishments. And we worked closely with their staff to vet the best management practices that we've published for reusable takeout containers to ensure that they're consistent with the Massachusetts Food Code. So entities can feel confident when they take those best management practices that these are acceptable and appropriate practices for any city or town that chooses to employ them. Now back to municipalities. Through our recycling dividends program, we support communities through this program if they choose to ban the use of single-use plastics. And those they can choose from a variety of types of plastics they want to ban, but some of those folks have banned foodware products. And when they do that, that does help to incentivize reusables in those communities. So if a community has a ban for certain types of plastics, they can earn points through our recycling dividends program. And those points translate into dollars, grant dollars, if they meet all other eligibility requirements. The communities that participate in RDP know this quite well. I won't take you all into the weeds, but it's a wonderful opportunity as an incentive program to encourage municipalities to just go further, keep pushing it further to reduce waste through this best practices framework that we have. And the last but not least, we have not yet developed model ordinances or bylaws focused on reusable foodware. But that's something that we could certainly keep in the queue for the next, 5 years of our work on this as we consider this. So, with the other action plans, we're looking at this moment in time to review all the action plans across the state as we move forward into the next 5 years. So I'm going to pause there. That really is everything related to the actions that are delineated in our Reduce and Reuse Action Plan, specifically related to single-use plastics and elimination as much as possible through reusable foodware. So we would love to hear from all of you. I don't know if anyone has put any questions in the Q&A, but we'll take that off screen. You can raise your hand. You could put a question in the Q&A, but at this point, we'd love it if we just had a conversation and welcome you to put your camera on and join us. Let's know what you think. Do you think we're headed in the right direction? Do you find that these tools are helpful to you? Are there suggestions for items that weren't on the plan maybe 3.5 years ago when it was issued, but we may want to consider going forward? That's what we're here for, and we welcome your thoughts.
We do have one question. Which towns have taken advantage of recycling dividends program?
In general, or for this, we would have to pull the list. I know the grant manager and others are on the call. I don't know how easy we could access that information, but we could certainly provide that in the follow-up to this. The number and specifically which communities have been able to earn points through recycling dividends in support of this work. Yeah, it's not something at our fingertips. What's that? I think Stephanie, maybe, is that possible? I'm not sure if that was Stephanie from Bridgewater, but feel free to speak if you'd like.
I don't think she meant to.
Oh, all right, okay.
That's the only question that we have. But I do encourage other people to raise their hands if you have anything. Have you used the BMP on reusables with any restaurants yet? How has it been received?
It was just recently released. I don't have any specific data as to how it's been utilized so far. There may be folks here on the call from Recycling Works who've had some direct experience, but I'll say it's very new in the process. So I'm not sure if we can even report back on that yet, but appreciate the question. And it looks like, yeah, we will certainly take note of that. I see a few folks coming online. So if you have something to share, please do from Recycling Works. And if not, because it's so new, we understand.
Yeah. I just want to also say that Kat gave us the answer for the question about RDP and that I just stuck her link in the chat.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kat.
It looked like, Sonia, were you gonna chime in?
Yeah, just to say sort of exactly. affirming what you just said, Kathy, that it is so new, but believe me, we're getting it in the hands of anyone and everyone that we can. So doing a lot of outreach, sharing it through our hotline, sharing it through technical assistance. So it's getting out there and it's been received well so far. I don't, so new, I don't have the data percentages or anything like that, but it's a really exciting tool that's being well received.
And just to be clear, Sonia works with Recycling Works.
Oh yeah, oops.
Peg
And
has
and to add another layer from that, Recycling Works is a firm that we contract with at DEP to do our outreach and technical support related to businesses and institutions, as mentioned. But many of you would know them by CET. So it's the folks at CET. Under the contract with MassDEP, we refer to them as Recycling Works for clarity. Looks like a few folks have their hand up, I think.
Peg has her hand up.
Thanks. So my group, Green and Greenfield, which is located in Greenfield, has had about $5,000 in our budget for the last 3 or 4 years to be available on a responsive basis if anyone was in my area was proposing doing something with reusable foodware. I have the ability, but not the time or the oomph to write an RFP to get someone to start those conversations. What thoughts have you of how we could move this forward without my just doing it all?
I'd say it looks like Christy raised her hand. Feel free to unmute, Christy, if you'd like to.
Thank you. Well, Peg, actually, I was just making a mental note that hello again, we should connect because not only do I live here in Greenfield, which is convenient, but I've been chatting with the city a bit about a coordinated effort to provide Recycling Works technical assistance to businesses in the Greenfield area. So let's chat if you have anyone in mind that you think would be a good candidate for reusables. We'd love to talk to them about it.
Christy, can
how can
you
I
tell
get you
us
my
where you're from?
information?
Sorry, Peg, I have your email address, I think, and I will reach out to you with my information. And Janice, what was that you were saying?
Could you just tell us where you're from?
Oh, of course. I'm sorry. CET and the Recycling Works program. I'm the outreach lead for Recycling Works, as well as many of the other programs that we work with. And I actually was representing one of our energy programs at a recent Green and Greenfield Energy Fair. So
Thank you. If anybody is gonna speak, it would be helpful just for the recording to introduce yourself, where you're coming from.
Thank you.
And that will help as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question in the chat before we get to Margie. Would you please suggest how dining venues may afford getting a dishwasher, especially if they don't have the volume or money for redish?
I guess I would say, I'm not sure what depending on the size, what kind of entity it might be, but it's possible that with the micro grant, consider that, or the recycling business development grant. Those might be opportunities for you. I see Claudine's nodding. Claudine is our branch chief for the commercial waste reduction program. So feel free to correct me but I think those would be the places as a private entity, if you're a business or institution, that those grant programs that are offered for our commercial and institutional folks out there, that opportunity may be available to you.
And we also have a recycling loan fund as well. That could be an option.
Okay. Thank you. Shall we go to Margie? Okay.
Hello. I can't seem to turn my camera on, so I'm not willingly in the dark. Or I'm not. You know what I look like. So just to build on, I think going back to one of the slides Leah showed about barriers, I think on the reusable side, it's that cultural piece and the education. So now that we've sort of put out, tackled the Board of Health side, I think the more education and outreach we can do to just continuously push the awareness, both at, Green Sword is doing a great job at the school level, but at the community level would be a helpful piece, hand in hand with the model legislation or the model policy.
I appreciate that. And if you being a practitioner in that space, and any others here who may be have businesses in that space, if there are associations that or groups of folks that come together that you think it would make sense for perhaps presentations or any type of communication that would help move this along, by all means, please let us know, because we may not have all that information right at our fingertips. But if you have some understanding of where that information could be directed, by all means, please, feel free to share that. That would be helpful.
Okay, I'll reach out. Thanks, Kathy.
Sure, thank you. And anything in the chat after we go to Sarah?
Hi,
Yes.
Shara Tell from Newton, Massachusetts. I own a refillery that does food as well as non-food items, and also been really involved in our local policy, both working with the schools as well as food establishments, commercial food establishments, to try to encourage reuse. So I agree with a lot of the stuff Margie said, although I actually, I wanted to make a comment about the health stuff. I think that I think it's, again, I don't know if there's other food establishments here who have this impact, but I do think a barrier is still the health side of things. I think on the one hand, it's great that the BMPs were done, but having the Department of Health review and make sure stuff is in alignment with the food code is different than them sort of approving or adopting the BMP. And also there's, I think a lot of you have been participating in the upstream reuse calls, but there is the Conference for Food Code Protection, which is an advisor to the FDA. There's been similar advancements there and stuff that I believe is getting adopted in the next FDA food code, but that doesn't mean that Mass is adopting it. I think Mass is still on like the 2017 or something food code. And I guess that would be something that would be very helpful. I know you're two different departments, but I think that to make it easier for food establishments to reduce barriers to adopting reuse would be ensuring that there is not an issue with the local health establishments, because it doesn't matter what MassDEP says is a best management practice. If the state and then the municipal departments of health that those food establishments are in don't agree with it, it's an uphill battle. So that I think would be something that I don't know what that process is for getting the Department of Health of Massachusetts to update its food code related to reuse. But that would be very helpful. And then the other thing around policy and model food code, there's a lot of stuff that's being developed out there. Happy to work with people to try to, gather what's already existent so that we can jumpstart that process here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shara. Yes, great examples that you want to share. And I certainly know that there are others out there. It's just something that we haven't been able to commit the time to yet. So if there are any that stand out as particularly beneficial policies that you've experienced, by all means, please share. With respect to the Department of Public Health, I can say that while the BMPs are done, they're a dynamic document, and we wanted it to be presented that way so that as new information has emerged from the last Conference for Food Protection, some of that information, certainly we're going to stay in communication with the Department of Public Health and work with them as we are able to encourage their updating of their website to reflect this, because we also feel that if this information is coming from the Department of Public Health as the authority, that would really benefit the promotion of this. Agreed. And also to keep our eyes and ears open for any changes to the food code nationally that could be adopted in Massachusetts, again, to enable more reuse and warewashing, et cetera, and waste reduction in this space. So I really appreciate your comments. If anybody else on the team would like to add to that, but those conversations with DPH are continuing. I just wanted you to know. So it's just never a quick process, I will say. It's a lot of people involved, and but we're staying with it because we know how very important it is, and we do want to address those obstacles because it's clear. Anything else about foodware and anything at all before we switch gears and to the next material stream? We're good, Janice?
We're good.
We're good. Okay, so if we could pull up the slides again, please, Leah, and we're going to go into textiles next.
Can you see that again?
Yeah, so it would be the next slide, please. Yep. Perfect. Great. So now we are going to look at activities in progress with respect to textile recovery and reuse. Now our activities that are relative to this material stream are going to look a little bit different because textiles are now a waste ban item, which means they're prohibited from disposal in the trash. And we also have been working on textile recovery for quite a few years now. So we're approaching this work from a little bit of a different perspective, but we're still going to walk through each of the actions in the plan and let you know how we've addressed these. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So textiles have been a priority stream for us for quite some time. They're designated in MassDEP's Solid Waste Master Plan, as well as the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan, because they comprise such a substantial portion of what we're still throwing away as trash. So this slide offers a little bit of data on what we're seeing. Every 3 years, we do waste characterization studies at the waste combustors across the state to see what is still being thrown away. And we find that more than 5% of our trash that we discard is textiles and clothing. Now, our goal, as Leah mentioned right up front, some of our waste reduction goals, and specifically for textiles, we want to reduce the disposal of textiles by 50% relative to our baseline of 2018 data. With that, we also hear from experts in the textile recovery industry that about 45% of donated textiles are sold as secondhand apparel. So most of that will go to reuse, either through charitable organizations or for-profit exporters that can sell baled clothing to developing nations. Another 30% of donated textiles are turned into industrial wiping cloths, and the remaining 20% are sent to fiber converters to be broken down into their basic components so that they can be made into shoddy material for insulation or carpeting, or sometimes even recycled into new garments. But still, while textiles could be, their recovery and reuse is a very big part of how this particular stream is managed. What we've been told by folks in the industry is there's only about 5% that is unusable. So next slide, please. So let's review our progress with the strategies that are denoted in the action plan relative to textiles. So with respect to education and behavior change, now while focused primarily on recycling, the Recycle Smart Massachusetts initiative that we've mentioned already addresses waste reduction, reuse, and repair topics, again, through their social media channels, the newsletters, as well as the Recyclopedia search tool. So if you go to the Recyclopedia search tool, which is on many communities' websites, and of course on our own, if you typed in textiles, it's going to lead you to donation opportunities. Coupled with this, we have another search directory called Beyond the Bin, and that allows users to find outlets for items that don't belong in the recycling bin. And the listings that we have in there for textile donation and recovery represent the most substantial material stream that's actually included within the directory. We have more than 2,000 locations for textile donation listed in that Beyond the Bin directory. That would include whether it's on municipal properties, public or private properties, or even nonprofits, but wherever some donation opportunities reside. So Beyond the Bin's a great resource. With respect to, on the lower row, tools, resources, and technical assistance, our partners at Recycling Works offer technical support for businesses and institutions when they start new programs in this space. They also have a search tool on their website for Recycling Works for textile recovery organizations. They have a web page dedicated to textiles and a case study on textile diversion as well. For municipalities, many of you would know our regional municipal assistance coordinators. Many of them, I believe all of them are on the call today. We have 8 coordinators across the state, and they provide direct support to municipalities in their efforts to initiate or expand textile recovery and reuse on the local level. So we've seen a tremendous amount of growth in that space over in recent years. And MassDEP also has a dedicated webpage for clothing and textile recovery, which Michaela Guglielmi from our team oversees. And that's got fact sheets, FAQs about the waistband, best practices for donation bin ordinances, all sorts of good material. So we have a dedicated website for this as well at MassDEP. Next slide, please. So looking at grants and financial incentives, there have been quite a few grants through several of our programs related to textile recovery programs. And a few of those are listed here. So the Recycling and Reuse Business Development Grant, that top one there, they've awarded more than $750,000 to 5 businesses. And that was between 2020 and 2023. So there may have been more added since then. But for collection and processing infrastructure related to textile recovery. Okay, so there likely, I believe there are several additional businesses that received awards in 2024. We've also given out a number of reduce, reuse, and repair microgrants related to textile recovery. And these have supported smaller organizations with initiatives aimed to repair textiles or redistribute reusable clothing to others. And then third on the list there, we have our, oh, thanks for the clarification, Janice, in the chat. The SMRP RDP program. So RDP is a component of that larger SMRP grant, and it shows up there in a few different ways. Textile recovery. For several years, municipalities were able to earn a point in the RDP part of the grant for textile recovery initiatives and outreach that they implemented in their municipalities. In 2024, we had 298 out of 352 municipalities report that they have textile collection programs. So the vast majority have some kind of program in place, and 190 municipalities earned the textile point in the RDP grant. So they actually earned funds for putting these programs into place. Now for the 2025 grant cycle for SMRP, which just opened April 1st, municipalities now must provide collection opportunities for textiles as one of the minimum eligibility criteria in order to apply for any of our waste reduction grants. And the collection of textiles will help communities continue to help them earn a point in the charm category of RDP. I know this gets very weedy. There are lots of little pieces to it, but for any municipalities on the call, I just wanted to kind of flag them about some of the changes in the grant for municipalities with respect to textile recovery. And then looking at job training, we don't provide direct, that's not really our purview is workforce development and training, but we can speak to how our grants can sometimes be a catalyst for new positions, as Leah mentioned. And so one example that came to mind, the team shared with me, was that in FY22, More Than Words, which is an organization that works with youth and had primarily been focused on books and the reuse and resale of books in good condition, but they received a substantial grant from DEP to expand their textile business initiative. And so one of their goals of the initiative was to employ 20 youth in the clothing business. So in 2023, they reported that they'd employed 25 youth for job training in the clothing processing business. And in addition, another 31 youth have worked in sourcing, including bringing in donations of both books and clothing. So indirectly, this is just an example of how our grants can help to expand job opportunities, depending on the organization. Next slide, please. Looking at networking, we facilitate, we've done a number of things, and this has been going on annually since certainly before my time coming into the Boston office, but there have been annual textile summits for quite a few years now, where folks at DEP would meet with the textile recovery organizations that serve Massachusetts. And what we do is we get together, we want to talk about what they're experiencing, any issues that they have, changes in the industry that are important, that can help inform our programs and practices so that they can be effective and we can capture more material for reuse. In the last couple of years, we've started to collect textile tonnage data from them to help measure our progress in recovering textiles. We also work to stay connected with SMART, which is the Textile Trade Association, to both stay connected on any new resources they have available that we can share out, including a recent addition that we put on our website for MassDEP that we received from SMART, which is a version of a model, a donation bin ordinance for those communities that might cite a bin somewhere to have best practices for having one operate efficiently and keeping it clean. With respect to legislation, we implemented the ban. MassDEP implemented a waste ban in November of 2022. Textiles were added to our list of banned materials. So those bans, if you're not familiar with them, they prohibit the disposal, the transfer for disposal of certain materials that can no longer be disposed of as trash. And so textiles are now part of that waste ban regulation. And so this was done after years of work, ensuring that we would have sufficient markets where textiles and clothing could be accepted and managed for proper disposal and reuse being the first and foremost opportunity. And then lastly, with respect to procurement, there is one state contract that I'm aware of that's been in place for some time that is a contract for industrial wiping rags made from used textiles. And so that is a way to keep these materials locally, turned into industrial wiping rags, which public works facilities and others and automobile repair shops, et cetera, they go through a lot of those sorts of materials. We encourage municipalities to use their grant funds to purchase to close the loop wherever possible. So whether it's something that's reusable, and in this case, that would be a place where textiles are on state contract. Certainly there may be opportunity for more though. So next slide, please. I wanted to just give a couple of extra moments to the waste ban itself because it's such an important part of this particular equation with respect to textile recovery. So as I mentioned, MassDEP has been working on textile recovery for quite a few years, well before the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan came into place. But because of that, some of the strategies and initiatives that we have embarked on have been in motion for some time. And as I mentioned, this includes the waste ban. So this is an important part of a larger picture here. The first waste bans were promulgated in the 1990s, and they're done by way of regulation under our statutory authority. And so changes occur over time. And if you were to look at what items are prohibited from disposal in Massachusetts, you'll see common recyclables, you'll see items that are hazardous, and you'll see items that may have substantial reuse opportunities like textiles, for example. Now, since the waste ban went into effect, which was a little over 2 years ago now, gosh, time flies, we've gotten some reports from both municipalities and from the textile recovery organizations about what they're seeing. And I just wanted to share a few brief data points with you. From municipalities, they've reported to us since 2022 a 15% increase in the tonnages of textiles that they have collected in their municipalities. So a 15% increase in 2024 relative to 22 in that 2-year window. The vendors, who are the recovery organizations that we meet with annually, this data comes from last year when we met with them in 2024, but they reported an increase of 7% overall versus the first year of the ban. So they've seen an uptick of 7% in the tonnage of textiles that they've collected from Massachusetts origins. Again, keeping in mind that the industry has advised us that about 45% of that goes directly to resale, 30% to wiping rags. All righty. So let's go to the next slide, where we're going to pause for questions related to all things textile recovery. Any feedback on what you've just heard? Any sharing about what you might be experiencing in this space? If you work in this space, perhaps share what you've noticed over the past couple of years. We'd love to hear from you and any ideas about moving forward so we can do even better. Looks like Lisa. I'll let Janice facilitate this, but yeah, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi there. I consider myself pretty up to date on all of this stuff and pretty aware of various policies, but I really haven't seen anything directed to the consumer or the population to get this message out there. So what sort of public awareness campaigns, marketing I remember the ad council of years ago where, they would promote this type of message. What are you doing on that end of things?
I would love to invite, so I see the smiles, the folks from this Recycle Smart Massachusetts team, because they work really hard on this and have done tremendous work. So I'll pass it if Janice, it looks like you might be ready to answer.
Yeah, I wish we had the money to do an ad campaign like that. It would be really great. What we are able to do is use the Recycle Smart MA tool. We provided a toolkit for all the municipalities back in 2022 in October that had a whole bunch of social media graphics and captions to explain what the waistband was. We encouraged them to put it on their websites so that if anyone was looking into that, I mean, essentially the biggest way that we were able to get the education out is that the municipality stopped picking up mattresses at the curb. Textiles a little easier to hide. So it was putting it on their local websites. I put in a couple of newsletters that we had written at the time, and then we just did one in, I think, February or January about the waistband. So, I mean, that's only getting out to who follows us, but we do rely a lot on the municipalities to get the word out about that as well. You can, that's all I got. You can go to Shara.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Hi, just a comment, and I don't see anyone from our DPW in Massachusetts, in Newton on the call, but just a shout out to them. As I understand it, they have HelpSy bins, I think, at all of our schools. And we now have a Green Captain program that launched this year. And as I understand it, again, don't hold me to this because I'm not the authority. I believe that we launched the program this year with RDP funds, but that the ongoing, going forward, the future years, it is going to be funded by the revenue that we've been generating from our HelpSy bins. And again, we've got 23 schools. We have a Green Captain at every elementary school, 2 at every middle school, and 4 at our 2 high schools. So it's pretty awesome. I just shout out to them for doing that. So that's something where it's it all kind of goes around and supports everything. So it's great.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. A lot of them are placed at schools, these donation containers, and because most, if communities are not getting a rebate for the textiles that they help to recover, they ought to be, because there's a lot of value in those materials and in those boxes. And so And that's where you can dial the schools in, particularly if the revenue can go to them or their programming or PTO, what have you, it can be designated. So it's certainly a no-cost program for a municipality. And in some cases, it has a little bit of that rebate value. And so by all means, you go for it. Great. Thank you, Sheriff, for sharing that with us. Like Alex, Eve.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can't see you, but
I'm unable to start my video. Sorry about that. It's not that exciting of a background anyway. Oh wait. Here we go.
oh, there you are.
Wait, there's my empty shelves. Anyhow, no, so I had a two-part question, but now it's a one-part because as somebody who does a lot of educational events on reuse, most people that I talk to have no idea the textiles are illegal to put in the trash around Massachusetts. So everybody from my family members to friends to people in the green space. So any kind of education on that, like whether it's a sticker on the trash barrels or just anything. But the other thing that I want to talk about is in all of the slides and everything, I don't see any discussion about any campaigns to get people to stop buying so much new clothes and new textiles. So what kind of campaigns around that? Because, you know, we have all of these textiles already here, but the bigger problem, we need to stop making all these new textiles. And I actually spoke with Shara a couple of weeks ago because, you know, she was doing an Earth Day event somewhere, and we talked about collaborating on doing, you know, printing t-shirts on reused garments because I run a reused clothing brand. That's what I do. And most people don't even know that's an option. They just think like, oh, we need new t-shirts. We got to print on new garments. But the truth of the matter is you don't. So I'm just wondering what all is going on there.
I will say one of my favorite t-shirts that I have is from the sustainability group in my town that we had printed on reusable
Oh, yes.
t-shirts. So one of my favorites. I think have we spoken within Recycle Smart or any newsletters? I think we've touched on fast fashion a little bit and certainly in some of the social media posts. Again, as Janice mentioned, it's a function of who's kind of dialed in to those channels. I know that also on our recycling outreach materials, the common materials that are available to all communities across the state, one of the do not put in your trash items is clothing and textiles. And so that's called out explicitly on not putting that way, like don't put in your trash and don't put it in your recycling. But we hear you. It sounds like I'm hearing from the last couple of folks who've spoken that more outreach, touching on consumption, perhaps fast fashion, buying less in the first place are areas where we could direct more of our attention. So points well taken. We really appreciate your feedback there. Wendy. There you are. Oh, can't hear you.
I clicked twice. Sorry. Hi, everyone. So I am blessed to have 3 bins in my town for textile collection. I'm going to give you an example. I was looking at my paperwork from October 1st through December 31st of 2024. 86,158 pounds of textiles were collected in just 3 textile recovery bins. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to tell you how I was able to get the message out there differently. And I know I say it all the time. I wish the DP had money to put up a billboard everywhere and say, these are your banned items. Banned, no use, can't do it, no transport. I get it. So it does fall on the municipalities. I just came from my 3rd visit to the school system because it's Earth Day next week. So I do it with the kids and I'll ask them silly things like, how many of you with a raise of hands have more than 3 pairs of sneakers? How many of you have more than, 2 or 3 socks that don't have a friend? And, you know, we kind of make a little bit of joke out of it. And I tell them that they can remind with using kind words, they can remind the adults and the people who are in their home that there's certain things you can't put in the trash because Ms. Wendy said so. And the DEP, and I tell them who the DEP is and why we have the DEP. These kids have been so engaged about it. And we may have missed the mark probably, you know, because the ban started 3 years ago almost with some of the adults. But I'm going to tell you, the minute a child of the age of, you know, 4 to 15 says, hey, Mom, we're not allowed to put that in the trash. And then they go and look and say, oh my gosh, I can't do that. But the particular company I work with, the CMRK, I find them to be incredibly helpful. And I do get money back. And that comes back into my recycling programs here. And I would highly recommend, if you don't have one in your town, at least one, get it on your properties, get it somewhere where, you know, I wanted a basketball court. So I highly recommend getting it into your school systems. Send a message to your, you know, I've been doing little monthly, I would call them memes for lack of a better word, or just send something out and go, hey, do you know that a can be recycled, blah, 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 or one t-shirt sits in a landfill, it takes this many years. And I ask them to include it in their newsletters that they send out. So there's smaller ways we can do it that cost us nothing to get that information out there. And if somebody needs some help with that, I'm easy to find. Town of Winthrop website, come visit, and I'm more than happy to share some of the stuff I have and you can use it.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. And maybe some of that can be shared through Green Sword. I'm not sure if you've already I believe you've already connected with them, but as a way to work with schools and waste reduction, it kind of feels like, yeah, like we're a missed opportunity if they're not doing it, right? So wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it looks like Stephanie has her hand up.
Hi, can you hear me? I was having some technical difficulties earlier.
Sounds fine. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay. Yes, so I'm Stephanie Eaton. I work at Bridgewater State University, and I just wanted to echo what the other members had said too. So we have 2 bins located on our campus, one on each side, and then during move out, we do provide a large trailer, a textile trailer. But the issue I think we have too is that college students, you know, they're bombarded in so many different ways with information. So any resources for, you know, for an email or versus social media or things that we could edit would be helpful for colleges, or it sounds like municipalities too, to be able to get that word out. I don't know if that's available. And then what Alex had mentioned too about the fast fashion, I feel like it's something we've talked about for a while, especially with like the age of the college students. It's just hard to kind of get that information in bite-sized pieces so that, you know, they can see and start thinking about and discussing these types of things.
Awesome. Point well taken. I don't know if we can search for social media posts based on topic. I'm not sure if our team is able to do that yet, but they have such a bevy of resources that that are grab and go. So I guess I would encourage you. Yeah, Dennis, please, I'll let you speak to it.
I just wanted to, we're running a little close on time, but the mattress and textile waistband toolkit, I put the link to box.com in the chat. I guess I thought that was on the website, but we could easily, you know, add that as a resource. So thank you, Marissa. And the other thing I would say is on our Facebook page, if you go to posts or even album, you can scroll through. We have a ton of textiles do not belong in the trash or recycling posts. So yeah, I don't think you can, I mean, you could search our Facebook page by textile and you would be able to see the posts that are related. But I think we could move on now because we're gonna I think we're done 11:30, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, so I'll zip a little bit on the others, but by all means, Stephanie or anyone else, if you want to reach out to us, we'll make sure we get that information to you. Thank you. Excellent conversation. So I am going to move on to the next slide. Now, it would be the next slide, please, on electronics. Perfect. So the final stream that we're going to discuss today is electronics. This is a picture from the BYTE, B-Y-T-E shop, which was one of our reduce, reuse, and repair micro grantees. They use their grant funds to purchase tools to repair and refurbish electronics. Now, the disclaimer, we haven't delved into our work on electronics yet. This section is going to be relatively brief, nor are there actions explicitly spelled out in the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan that address electronics. However, there are plenty of things that we know we can do in this space that can fit in and can translate for the electronic stream. So I'm going to just pop through the next couple of slides so that you can see. So let's see. Yep, the next slide here, education and behavior change. Some of the things that are common that you've seen across the other material streams would be, Recycle Smart and the work that we've done in the Recycle Smart initiative on all things related to education and behavior change to really promote reuse, repair, and extending product lifespan for a whole host of products. Again, not specific to electronics, but they are included within this conversation. So there have been some social posts about local events, for example, that repair electronics, among other things. We've yet to get started deeply on electronics, and so this is going to reflect a pretty light touch so far. Tools, resources, and technical assistance. The plan mentions promoting local repair and reuse events, libraries of things, tool lending libraries, and swap shops, all of which may include electronics. There are also a few existing resources that help businesses and institutions donate and or acquire used electronics. Recycling Works has technical assistance and web page guidance on office equipment reuse. MassDEP also has a municipal reuse and repair web page. So we do have some resources that are existing here already. Given relatively light, but we do have a few resources. Next slide, please. And now looking at grants and financial assistance related to electronics, we can provide local businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities for waste reduction and reuse as mentioned, and then we have some specific for municipalities. So for our SMART grants, which is for municipalities, we offer swap sheds. So that's one of the equipment items that municipalities can request. And we award these most years. And that would be a swap shed. And that could include electronics along with other household goods. I've seen that in some setups in communities, even if they have an electrical setup there. So someone wanting to take an item, say a printer, they could plug it in and test it and know that it's still in good working condition. We also encourage reuse and repair libraries of things and tool libraries through our Recycling Dividends program. Those sorts of activities help communities earn points through the RDP grant, and then they can continue to spend the grant dollars that they've earned to do even more in that space. And of course, that can include electronics. As mentioned, we've given micro grants to a few projects related to electronics repair and reuse. The Bike Shop was mentioned, and also Computers for People. They also do repair. And last year, a recycling business development grant was awarded to Good Point Recycling for solar panel reuse and repurposing. So these are some examples we're starting to see in this space. Next slide, please. You can see there's not a whole lot here in terms of job training, workforce development. There's nothing specifically noted in the plan here. And in terms of networking, it's more our general reduce or reuse work group and the listserv opportunities together. So next slide, please. Few opportunities in procurement. We have found refurbished items on state contract, like refurbished toner cartridges, but for the most part, again, this is to be determined going forward. You can see the actions that are noted in the plan itself, but we have our work to do as we go through one material stream at a time. Next slide, please. I'm kind of thinking of pausing the discussion and then doing the two following that for the group, and then we can open it up again. because what we have on the next slide, if you don't mind taking me there, thank you. So the next two slides really end kind of the meat of the presentation. I know time is running short. What we did here is we wanted to consolidate a few of the actions that are noted within the plan that aren't specific to any material, but that they aren't explicit, but that the work here can overlap multiple categories. And you can see we haven't started this yet. These can get a little more complicated. So for example, for education and behavior change, there's an action noted about developing an online reuse directory statewide. That would be awesome. We haven't started that yet. Creating an online calculator to quantify the environmental, social, and economic benefits of reuse. Again, these are actions that we haven't embarked on yet, and it could touch a variety of different materials. In terms of tools and resources, it looks like more best practices for businesses, adopting reusable transport packaging. That's of interest. And just business, support to businesses adopting reusable models. Next slide, please. Job training and workforce development. Again, this straddles all of the different streams. And at the same time, it's not directly within DEP's purview. So it really relies on our partnerships with all of you who are the businesses and the municipalities and the practitioners in this space, so that we can learn more about your needs and what you're seeing in terms of growth here. But to support training programs for repair and refurbishment, again, our grants can help catalyze this, but we don't provide that directly. And last but not least, partnering with schools, colleges, and universities to look at design thinking, really the upstream opportunities to rethink before we have all of this, these products to manage on the tail end of it, but to really design for more durability, repairability, and reuse. So that concludes our review of those sections of the plan. We wanted to open it up one more time for discussion before our closing slides. I know that was super brief. You can see we haven't done really been able to delve into the electronics space, but if you would like to share now, by all means, feel free, raise your hand. We're happy to hear from you.
No questions in the question and answer box.
Is there anyone on the call today who works in this space that might be related to electronics and reuse opportunities for electronics? I'm curious. They may not be on this call. Oh, Thomas? Yeah, great. Would love to hear anything you may share if you work in this space. If you could let us introduce yourself, please.
Hey, I'm Thomas Witherell from Data Recycle of New England. So just a small thing on an issue that we're having with reuse is a lot of organizations keep computers and stuff managed, and it's getting harder and harder to be able to read laptops and Chromebooks and stuff from schools. And so I think a little bit of outreach on that could be helpful. We're trying to do our own, just reaching out to our customers. But it is definitely an ongoing issue, and it seems to be getting worse and worse.
So they're managing it in-house? I'm sorry, just to understand a little bit better.
So like through like you know, like iTunes, and it's not just like iPads anymore. It's now MacBooks, and Chromebooks are managed by, uh, schools and Android systems, and we try to, contact these organizations to try to get them unmanaged, but it doesn't always happen. So it's just an issue that we're dealing with anyways.
I think you're going to have to find what you mean by managed, because I don't think we know what that means.
So like we can erase and reset, say, a Chromebook that, schools have. And what happens is the Chromebook, even though it's erased, it's still connected to the school system because the IT has their own management system, and as soon as it connects to the internet, it tries to connect to the school system, and so it makes the computer, you can't use it anymore.
What would be that's fascinating. What would be the message specifically? What would be the message? Because we do have, we do outreach to schools. I'm just curious, what would the messaging be? Like, how would we describe how to turn that off?
Well, just to prepare, they just need to prepare a little bit more, before releasing their electronics. So they have management systems with Android, and then even not just on the management system. So like iTunes has a management system for like Apple products. And then, they even have it for Windows products now. And there's things that they automatically try to reinstall an operating system if a computer is BIOS locked, for instance. So like if they can remove BIOS locks, firmware locks, and take from their management, they should know what the management is, and basically deprovision all these. That way they can be reused again, because a lot of like what we're dealing with is stuff can't be reused as much anymore, as far as computers are concerned, not just tablets, phones, but now it's computers, laptops, Chromebooks, all that stuff.
Interesting.
Thomas, sorry, Kathy, I put my email in the chat. Could you just email me? I think this is fascinating, and it's something I think that the Green Sword group would love to chat more with you about and maybe be a speaker there, because I don't think the people that we're working with know that this is a thing. Maybe the IT people do, so we just need to get everybody together.
Yeah, of course. That's why I'm just bringing it up, because I don't know that everybody understands that it's a thing.
Absolutely. And clearly it sounds like an obstacle for reuse. And so thank you so much for speaking up and mentioning it. And let's talk more offline too.
Yeah, of course.
Really appreciate. Again, we haven't gotten into that space yet, and so it's perfect that you shared that with us. Thank you. If there are no more questions, I am going to wrap this up with the last couple of slides. So if Leah, if you don't mind sharing mark your calendars. We have 2 more of these meetings coming up on different materials, as you can see. One is we'll focus, because each of these has so much to it. So we're going to talk about bulky items on May 6th, just explicitly. Same kind of format, but only about bulky items, household durable goods, and business institutional furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And then on May 13th, our deconstruction work group will meet. We'll talk about building materials, and we'll also have a couple of rapid fire presentations during that May 13th as well. So we welcome you to those conversations as well, and really appreciate your participation here. The next slide shows you, and you'll get a copy of these slides as well. This is just a reminder about the grants and the deadlines, because there's a whole lot going on. Right now, the Reduce and Reuse micro grant is live, and that deadline is May 15th. If you look down below, the next deadline is June 2nd for municipalities applying to the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. You go back up again to July 15th. There's a new innovations grant, has a deadline of mid-July. And last but certainly not least, the Reuse and Recycling Business Development Grant will go live later this year. So different grants, different timelines. You can dial in to us about any of these who are explicitly for businesses and institutions. The Reduce and Reuse micro grant can be for kind of any entity, and then SMRP is for only municipalities. Last slide, please, Leah. would be how to connect with us. If you have thoughts, questions, ideas that pop to your mind after today, by all means, please feel free to reach out. We welcome it, the conversation, because we all work together. I think we're all wanting to point in the same direction and enable more reuse in Massachusetts. So thank you all so very much for your time. Thanks to the team for putting this together. And I hope you all have a good rest of the day.